Hi, my name is Basil Morani, and I'm going to be talking to you guys about a couple of articles that I read. One is The Neighborhood Characteristics, Parental Politics, Practices, and Children's Math Achievement in Elementary School. Now, this one is an article that was published on April 21st, 2021, so it's a recent article, and it's by Emily, Greenman, Katrina, Bodovski, and Katherine. Now, some of the things that I took away from this article was that they were kind of doing a research where they were trying to see how neighborhood characteristics and parental education uh, education related activities and upbringing had an impact on the educational well-being of a child. So they were talking about past researches where they were saying that the neighborhood had an impact on the child's well-being in the school or their academic status because they were struggling at home, so they were struggling at school. And so they kind of took it to the next level. They were like, okay, yes, neighborhoods, they talk to each other, and they, parental raising and parental decisions generally are similar in the neighborhood. So a poverty struck neighborhood with poor families are generally more likely to have the same behaviors and same expectations, and they're going to observe the same kind of practices as each other. And then our middle class, rich class, upper class neighborhood would have the similar practices within themselves. So now the question was, does this can this be, reversed with the parental role, with the parental commitment? Um, you know, would it be less devastating if the parents were more involved in educational practices or activities? So that's what they were looking at, and they were doing the research. And what they found out is that neighborhood characteristics have been linked to parenting factors as diverse as parental role commitment, parenting styles, strategies, and in home learning strategies. And neighborhood poverty was associated with less maternal warmth and a poor home physical environment. You have the stress of poverty, you have the stress of work, you have then the child, and so that maternal warmth or that time to like have those discussions at home is probably not as prevalent in a neighborhood, a poverty stricken neighborhood or a poor family. And so that was having an impact. Parents often share and reinforce each other's notions, as I mentioned, and what to do to raise your child. Um, it has also been shown that parents' education related practices are heavily influenced by family socioeconomic status. Um, so, it, if they're poor and, it's a single parent working out long hours to try and make the family survive and to just get by in the home, they're probably not going to be having a lot of education related practices at home. And because of that, the student struggles at school and they're not doing as great. And so that's kind of correlated. And so they were talking about that. And then they were talking about how while they have proven that, the situation is a problem and this is creating an issue for us, they also realize that while we are aware of it, what can you do to make it easier for those parents to have those, uh, you know, that ability, that opening to have those practices engrossed in the home, because of course they're going through something that's a little difficult and it's a little harder to kind of have that environment at home. So they were also talking about the mother's education attainment and the neighborhood poverty kind of being related, and they were talking about the social characteristics uh, of those two were most associated with school readiness. There's also they were talking about highly organized activities that middle and upper class parents engage in with their children, so like field trips and um, you know other kind of activities that foster skills, behavior, attitudes that lead to greater school success. That the other group, the poor group, children from the poor families, can't exactly partake in. And then And then it was talking about the parents in the poor neighborhoods compensating for their deficiency in their schools and neighborhood environment by incorporating learning activities into their daily routines and participating in educational trips and programs, which was fantastic. Of course, that wasn't something everyone could do, and that was the biggest gap that they were having. And then a larger number of siblings, single parent families, and non traditional family structures were associated with a lower number of educational related practices, probably because there's a lot more going on in that situation, and the involvement and the awareness isn't really there. While parents that were more involved were aware, knew the other parents of the other kids in the school and were more involved in the school, they were more likely to have more educational related practices in their home. So positive parental educational practices can serve as a buffer against neighborhood adversities. However, to encourage that, they didn't really know how to do that, and it wasn't really discussed. And then did not include the complexity of language spoken at home between parents and children. So that was one of the flaws that were there in the program. And then the second article that I read was the Canadian Journal of Environmental Education, and it was Environmental Education and Ecofeminist Pedagogy, Bridging the Environmental and Social. And this is by Lara Harvester and Sean Blenkinsop, and they're from Simon Fraser University. And the reason why I took this topic is because it does focus on the ecological, but it also focuses on the feminist side. And so I kind of wanted to cover that a little bit because there were a few differences between the two articles, where one was talking about the neighborhood being the issue, but they do have the similarity where they say that the women play the major role in the educational and economical change and progress. So I kind of wanted to focus on this one a little bit just to kind of discuss that a little more. So, what they were talking about is that the feminist research sees gender as the central organizing idea of lives and is of key importance for those who are wanting to change, social conditions. And with everything going on, I think there's quite a few people who are not happy, especially in Texas, with that. So this was a very interesting topic for me. And then there's the evidence that women and children of all races suffer the most from poverty, human rights violations, and environmental destruction, making ecofeminist approach issues very relevant. And so that was interesting. They used a quote that I really liked from Warren from 2000, and they argued the promise and power of ecological feminism is that it provides a distinctive framework for both reconceiving feminism and for developing an environmental ethic which takes seriously connections between the domination of women and the domination of nature. And I thought that was very interesting because they were connecting the two with each other. They were connecting that domination of nature was kind of related to the women. So I thought that was quite interesting. And then the feminism links social injustice and ecological crisis, and it kind of provides a little bit of insight and for overcoming current and seemingly unsuccessful approaches to education. And I thought that was interesting that they were kind of like, hey, this is not working. We just need to take it and throw it out and start from scratch. Where they were kind of talking about creating a learning village, where they were creating an entire place from scratch where the students were involved in the building and the research of what tools to make and kind of having dialogue. And that was the main focus, that for an ecofeminist educational system, there has to be dialogue. But the dialogue is not just any dialogue, it's open-hearted, open-minded dialogue that is equal. So nobody's talking down to anyone. Nobody's like shutting anyone down. Everyone has a voice and everyone has an equal voice, and that is a huge key. Now the question is, how would you, change that dynamic? I thought it was interesting that they used the relation of teacher and student, which I'm a teacher, and in my class, I kind of have removed that barrier where we're all working together to teach, and we all work together to learn, and we teach each other, and it's become more of a collaborative learning environment where we have a lot of group activities where the kids are helping each other, they're growing from each other, everyone's an expert in something, and we kind of work together on that. And the kids have a say in what activities we do to learn the topic, so they'll give me, they'll put in a little suggestion note, or maybe at the end of class they'll be like, hey, Miss Puzzle, I think this would be a good idea to learn this topic this way, or I would like to do this kind of activity, and that would be incorporated into the classroom so that they have a say or a whole stake in their learning, and so they're more invested in it. And I have found that it does work a lot better. So I was kind of happy to see that this article was kind of encouraging that and strengthening my belief system on that. And then they were talking about social injustices and how ecofeminism kind of focuses on that and how to overcome that. And then they were talking about personal and political actions being a part of the goal of a more democratic future for all. So they were not just talking, they're not just saying, let's change this classroom, they're saying, let's change everything. So your personal, your political, everything needs to change to really get this framework, and everyone needs to take part of it. It can't be one or two people, it has to be everybody. And so that was very interesting to me. And then the topic of genuine dialogue, as I mentioned, which was from Bubber from 1965, and I like the way they put it. They were like, it's like an embrace, a moment when two come together, and without loss of self, are able to hold each other simultaneously with an open heart and mind. It is built on respect and a deep sense of intrinsic value of the other being. And I thought that was a fantastic way to put it. Like, when you hug someone, you feel whole and they feel whole. And that is what we want with the dialogue. We want everyone to feel heard. We want to feel everyone to feel safe, everyone to feel welcome. The whole concept of, a safe learning environment, a safe place. And that is fantastic. And I thought that was a great idea. So I was into that. And then they were talking about it calls for a radical relational shift in education. So it's asking that we go towards something that is more engaging, and we're coming together, and we're not just the humans, but the community and the nature, everything kind of comes together, and it's more equitable. And it's not something that's normal now, but it's fully equitable, and I thought that was great. And it talks about involving the students, as I had mentioned, to be in the process of assessment as well. So not just in the classroom in the learning process, but in the assessment, so that they are part of that. And I like the idea that they gave of apprenticeship. So the goal is not a grade, but it is mastership. And so it's not just saying, okay, I know how to, mark the right answers. I know how to write a good essay, but it's really being able to implement it and master the skills and knowledge that is being asked of them to learn. And so I thought that was a great concept. And that is what I got from the two articles, and I thought it was fantastic. And I think this is a great learning curve for everyone, and I think it kind of helped with the previous topics that we talked about, even with the work and family balance. And this kind of brought a holistic approach to all the subjects, and was like, hey, you're right. There is that issue of, poverty and this and that. But if we come together and we deal with it in a different way, and we have this like equal standing and within the discussion, then that other stuff can kind of fall into place, and we can work together to change that and improve that. And I thought that was a fantastic ending to the first article with the second. And that is what I got for you guys today. Thank you so much. Have a great day.